Hey, welcome to Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour. You know, that's how I said it, nice and slow today and relaxed. So we're doing a nice, slow, relaxed kind of show. Just me and Cha-Cha with my nice sweater on, my nice, warm, comfy sweater. Can't see that on the radio, but you can see it on TV. So today, of course, you know what this week is? Because you know Shark Week is in, what is it, July or August? I think it's July.
I think it's July.
July is Shark Week. So now in December, we have Keith Week.
Ooh.
This is Keith Richards' week. His birthday was December 18th. So Madhouse Magazine is doing a week-long celebration of his life.
That's fun.
The man, the myth, the legend. The man who gave birth to me.
Wow.
That doesn't even make sense.
No.
But he did. He had a big influence on me growing up. As you may have heard, I've talked about him many times. I am very fond of Keith Richards.
Yeah.
I'm very fond of the Rolling Stones. That the Morgillos were a Rolling Stones house. Anybody walked past through a different window, you'd be hearing a different Rolling Stones song. And one of my parents or your grandmother yelling, "Turn that down! Don't you know any nice songs?"
Devil music.
Yes, so Keith Richards, he turned 75, I think. Yes,
God
75.
bless.
God bless. Yes, that he is a living legend.
He is.
And I just don't know. I'd be beside myself if anything ever happened to him. So today we're going to spotlight. Now, you know, we'll talk about the Rolling Stones, of course, because did you know he was in the Rolling Stones?
I did.
Yes.
I do.
But we're going to spotlight his solo album
Yeah.
from 1988. Talk is Cheap, released October 3rd, 1988. So we're going to talk all about that, all about Keith's life. We're going to do a retrospective, if you will, as I like to say.
I don't know
So-
that much about his life,
Well,
which
it's very fascinating, I
Yeah.
have to say. So we're actually, as you know, Madhouse Magazine demands we read a story each week. So Madhouse Magazine is doing Keith Week. So, of course, you know what kind of story we're going to read? We're going to read a Keith story. So let's do this one. I bet you didn't know this. Keith had a brother, and his brother just released a new tell-all book.
whew,
Ready for this? Claude Richards has a brother named Keith, and Keith is one of the most famous musicians in the world. Claude has just released a new tell-all book titled Brother Keith. The book chronicles life growing up in England with Keith Richards as your brother. Many books have been written about Keith, but never one from this perspective. The book details Keith's early life. Keith was a very funny boy, always making jokes and pulling tricks, said Claude. He would form a cup with his hand, fart in it, and then hold it over my face and nose. One time I passed out from the smell. Keith was also a sore loser, and when we were playing board games, if he was losing, he would throw the board in the air, scattering all the pieces. Keith was very mischievous, or mischievous, as they would say, in,
Mischievous.
literally in England. That's how it's pronounced in England.
literally.
He loved setting a bag of dog crap on fire on the neighbor's porch and running away.
Oh.
All the parents in the neighborhood knew if anything bad happened in town, Keith was the most likely suspect. Other pranks that Keith pulled on me. He reversed the wires in the light switch. When I tried to turn the switch on, I got electrocuted. I spent 5 days in hospital in a coma. I still can't use my right hand. He was such a little scamp.
Oh.
Good times. Keith's funniest prank, however, was when he told me to hand a note to the bank teller. To my surprise, the note told the teller to hand over all the money, that this was a bank robbery. I spent 7 years in penitentiary for that one. We had a good laugh over it, though. And the reason I wrote this book was that I was interested in cashing in on my brother's success, said Claude Richards. There you go.
Seems reasonable.
Yes, he's very honest.
Wow.
All the news not fit for print.
Yeah,
Keith
definitely.
Richards. So, now we're going to, as we said, this is a nice calm show, sitting by the fire here in our sweaters. So
Yeah.
now we're going to play a little music. And it's Keith Week. We're going to play some solo songs off of this album. We're
I
gonna
say
play,
we should have a pajama party.
well, I'm basically in my pajamas. I'm actually not wearing any pants at all, if you people could see on TV under this table. So anyway, what I was going to play, I'm going to play Take It So Hard from Talk Is Cheap, and then we're going to play You Don't Move Me, and we're going to talk about that song when we come back here.
Whew.
Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour, 474, what is it?
474.
474 the mix. Because it threw me off. It said 454 is how long that song was, so it threw me off. All right, be right back. Hey, welcome back. Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour 474 The Mix. And you are joining us here during Keith Week. That's right, Keith Richards Week all over the world. People are partying and everybody is leaving cookies out. And it's a great, great time. So, anyway, let's talk about Keith's life.
Okay.
Did you know he was born in England, of course. In what year? He was born in 1943, December 18th. And him and Mick Jagger were born in the same hospital. Did you know this?
No.
They did. They were. And they grew up in the same neighborhood. But then Keith moved away. That actually, they were neighbors and school chums as little children.
Oh, wow.
But Mick's mom did not like Keith. He always said, "Oh, that one's sneaky, that one. I don't like him." So Keith's family moved away, right? And then they ran into each other years later as teenagers on the train. And Mick had a whole bunch of records under his arm. They're like Chuck Berry records and Muddy Waters and all these great blues music that Keith loved. And Keith said, "Hey, don't I know you?" And then they got their friendship back going again. And then they hooked up with Brian Jones and they formed a band. You know what the band's name was?
The Rolling Stones.
Yes, very good. The greatest rock and roll band in the world. In its infancy. This was 1962.
Wow.
And Bill and Charlie weren't even in the band yet when they played their first gig.
Huh.
I don't have the exact date, but they played it in 62. And then shortly after that, they threw these other guys out, and they got Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts in the band.
Wow.
And then they were signed to Decca Records in 1963. And at this point, they were basically a cover band, until they were convinced by Andrew Loog Oldham, their manager, to start writing their own songs. So you know what their first hit song was? It was a top 10 hit, but not for them. It was As Tears Go By, which was a hit for Marianne Faithfull.
Wow.
Who was Mick's bird at the time, as they say then. And the first top 10 hit that they wrote for themselves was The Last Time. It's called This Could Be the Last Time. And then in early 1965, they wrote a song called I Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Wow.
Their first international #1 song.
Classic.
And there's a good story about that. When Keith wrote it, he said that he woke up in the middle of the night with this riff in his head. And he put it down on tape, on the tape recorder, and then went right back to sleep. So he said that you could hear it is a dan, 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 about 10 seconds of that on the tape recorder, and then 8 hours of him snoring.
Oh, that's fantastic.
How awesome. How valuable would that tape be of
It's
Keith
amazing.
snoring for 8 hours with the original riff to Satisfaction.
That's amazing.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. So the innocent time. And of course, you know, the rest is history. They went on
Right.
to become the greatest rock and roll band in the world. My favorite band of all time. Of course. You know that. Right?
I do.
So I'm going to name the albums that they came out with now during this time period.
Okay.
Because you know what changed everything for them? Keith came across open G tuning, where you tune your guitar to a different method instead of the standard tuning. Is called open G. And that's where he wrote some of his best songs like this.
Okay.
And listen to these albums that came out between 68 and 78. I've gone over this 100 times.
68 and 70.
The 10 years, the greatest 10-year period in the history of music. Nothing could ever top this, ever. So here we go. Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, XL on Main Street, a double album, Goat's Head Soup, It's Only Rock and Roll, Black and Blue, and Some Girls.
Wow.
That could never be accomplished again if we live for 10 billion years.
Right.
So there you have it. And, you know, Keith had a lot of trouble during this time, if you don't recall. that
What kind of trouble?
He had a lot of arrests and a lot of drug problems. And his first arrest was 1967, where they were kind of serious about it. And the British government wanted to make an example of him and Mick, and they were facing jail time, but they ended up only doing a month. But then he was caught with heroin, his most serious offense, in 1978.
Wow.
In like Toronto. So he was facing like big time, I think like 30 years or something in jail. So it turned out, you know what he ended up serving? That he ended up serving no
arrest?
time at all. He just had to do 2 free concerts.
Oh, wow. It's good to be Keith, man.
Yes. So he ended up having to form this band, the New Barbarians, with Ron Wood and Stanley Clarke and a bunch of these guys. Because, I don't know, the rest of the Stones weren't available, so he had to do it right away. So he got these other guys, and they
Where
did
were
2
the rest of
concerts.
the Stones?
Who knows? They were around.
Kind of weird.
But they were busy, man.
Busy with what? They
I don't know what they were doing.
they were in a band with Keith.
They were doing something at that time,
Yeah,
so they couldn't do it.
Calling shenanigans.
Exactly. So I did not go to that concert. But anyway, the thing that I liked most about the Rolling Stones is they always changed, that they went with the times. This was Mick Jagger's call, that he was, like in 67, he made them do that psychedelic album, Satanic Majesty's Request, which some say is not that great, but I find it's a excellent album, and it's got a great album cover, of course,
Yes,
too.
it does.
So
What songs are on that?
a lot of songs.
Okay, thank you.
Like 2,000 Light Years from Home.
Okay.
She's a Rainbow.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, then, they got back to their blues roots, of course, and they did all these great albums. But then, with some girls, they did everything from disco to punk to, and then black and blue. They have the rhythm and blues and the soul and disco with Miss You. So they always kept changing with the times. Keith wasn't really thrilled about that, and that's what drew them apart in the 80s. They were actually having a serious what would you call it, disagreement.
Yeah.
Things were not
Difference
going
of
well.
opinions.
Right. That relations grew between Jagger and Richards had grown tense in the 80s as they began to disagree on the musical direction of the band.
Yeah.
The image-conscious Jagger was keen to follow the trends and keep the Rolling Stones current, while Richards wanted to preserve their reputation and roots.
Yeah. I could see that.
And then Jagger was more interested in pursuing his solo career instead of touring for Dirty Work in 1986, and that was enough. Richards had enough, he said, and he began a solo project for the first time on his own as well. And that was this right here.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Was that a solo album before he was with the Drunken Winos?
This is the Expensive Wine Drunken
Okay.
Winos.
There you go.
This is the Expensive Winos.
There you go.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about that. But I don't think I even, when we came back in, did I mention the songs that we played? I don't think we did.
I think he did, yeah.
Well, anyway, the songs were Take It So Hard and You Don't Move Me. And that was off of this album, released October 1988. And I think we should actually take another break now and play some more songs, because we're doing a short show here today.
Short show.
We're in a rush here, so we're going to play more songs, then we're going to hit them back to talk about this album, and that's that. Well, no, before we take the break, though, we're going to talk about that song, You Don't Move Me, that we just played. Okay. That was off of this album where Keith was saying this to Mick, saying, you don't move me anymore. So things were at their worst during this time period. But let's see what happens. Come back after the break, and we'll find out. So now let's play some more songs. Let's play You Got the Silver off of Let It Bleed. You know who that was about? That was about Anita Pallenberg. And then we're going to play Happy off of Exile on Main Street.
You're going to explain.
Both sung by Keith Richards.
Nice.
Yes, that's why I play. All these songs are sung by Keith Richards or off his solo album. So that's what we have here. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour. You just heard You Got the Silver and Happy from Let It Bleed and Exile on Main Street, sung by Keith Richards, dedicated to Anita Pallenberg. You want to hear about Anita Pallenberg?
I absolutely do.
All right, let's go.
I'm very curious.
In 1967, she was like an it girl of the day. Okay. I think she was involved with Andy Warhol scene, and she was a model, an international model. That's much better than a regular model.
Yeah.
And she spoke 5 languages, and she was very weird, and she carried garlic around with her all the time to ward off vampires. Oh. Just in case. So anyway, yeah, so in 67, she was dating Brian Jones in the band.
Okay. And
he flew off the handle one time and was throwing things at her and yelling and screaming. So her and Keith fled off to Morocco or something, where they remained together for 12 years.
What? What's her name?
Anita Pallenberg.
Wow.
And she just passed away last year.
Okay.
I would have loved to interview Anita Pallenberg.
Yeah, that would have been
You know,
great.
yeah.
So she was with Brian Jones, and then she takes off.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
very scandalous.
Scandalous.
That happened a lot. It's like rock bands are like 90210 that they can only date each other. You know, there's only like 6 people in the whole world.
Yeah. Well, right. It's true.
Because, same thing. I think Mick dated her too before or something, and Marianne Faithfull. It's all intertwined. But anyway, poor Brian Jones. He got the short end of this stick, I gotta say. That he was actually the leader of the band when they first formed. He was the musical genius, the driving force, and everything behind it. But then when Mick and Keith started writing their own songs, he got pushed out, and then Mick took over, and then Brian felt left out, and he started drinking and doing more drugs, and then it got worse, so they ended up firing him. And then he ended up drowning on July 3rd, 1969, at the age of 27.
Yeah, 27 Club.
Yes, and he was replaced by
Mick Taylor.
Very good, Mick Taylor, who they performed some of their greatest work. And then when Mick quit, still never understand it till I lived to be 100, why you would quit the Rolling Stones. They got to be a big pain in the neck.
You know how bad you have to be?
I can imagine Mick Jagger being a big pain in the ass,
yeah.
can't you? See, as much as I love Mick, Mick's my second favorite. Yeah,
he's very...
if anyone has the right to be a prima donna, it's Mick Jagger. It's not some,
very few.
It's not some schlub in a cover band in New Jersey that has to be a prima donna, right?
I'm with you on that.
Mick Jagger has the right. So, but Keith's my man. Keith is the guy who wrote all these riffs of these songs, and he just invented the image of a rock star. I gotta say that just the coolest guy to ever live. And can you imagine when you're 8 years old, 6 years old, looking up to this guy who's like the most amazing, coolest person you've ever seen in your life?
Yeah,
and you
he
just
really
have
was.
Just try to emulate him, and it almost killed me, as I said many times, that he has the makeup of a horse, I would say, that he's still 75 after what he's done to his body. It's amazing. He still looks great, too, I got to say, for 75. Yeah, wait till you're 75. Then we'll see.
How dare you? Oh.
I think you look as good as Keith. Oh,
thank you.
So where are we now? All right, so
I hope you live to see it.
Ron Wood joined the band in 75 for the first album was Black and Blue. And then, so now we're up to the 80s here now. And
not a good time.
Right, not a good time for anything.
Yeah, it's true.
For the classic rock stars. They had this old new wave stuff going on. Yeah. So a lot of bands were, in bad shape at this time.
Yeah.
But anyway, where am I now? Where's my notes, Cha-Cha? You got me all discombobulated. Oh.
No.
Here we are. Mm-hmm. Okay. So here we are, 88, where he's recording his first album, and it's released in October. And he's got this great band, as you mentioned, Expensive Winos.
Yes.
Listen to this. Steve Jordan on drums, Charlie Drayton on bass, Ivan Neville on keys, Bobby Keys on sax. Bobby Keys was born on the same exact day as Keith Richards, that they were best friends. Bobby Keys played on all the Stones albums. He played the saxophone. He's Brown Sugar. He does the saxophone on that. And him and Keith were just great buddies. And he passed away a couple of years ago. They were born on the exact same day. Isn't that something? And then, of course, they had Waddy Wachtel on guitars. And the special guests came in during this time. Bootsy Collins, Bernie Worrell, Maceo Parker, Johnny Johnson, who was Keith Richards' Chuck Berry's original keyboard player in his band. Mick Taylor came back for this.
Really?
Yeah. That's something.
That is something.
You know who was doing background vocals on this?
No.
Patti Scialfa.
Wow.
You know who that is?
Of course.
That's Bruce Springsteen's wife.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it was a great album that Mick had his solo albums. Mick's solo albums, I was never a fan of any of Mick Jagger's solo albums.
I can't.
And Keith came out with this first one, and it was just so good.
It was actually, do you remember when we went to see
I'm going to talk about that in a second. Let me
Gotcha.
name these songs now. Big Enough, Take It So Hard, Struggle, I Could Have Stood You Up, Make No Mistake, You Don't Move Me, How I Wish, Rock a While, Whip It Up, Locked Away, and It Means a Lot. Every song on here is a great song. Oh, classic Keith.
It's true.
And, well, actually, I got to talk about the time, this period, when I actually, right after this came out, I won tickets to go see Keith Richards in December. It was actually, I looked it up to see what the exact date was. It was December 17th, 1988 at the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I was living in Queens, New York at the time, and I had no idea where New Jersey was,
right?
Let alone the Brendan Byrne Arena,
true.
right?
Yeah.
So I won these tickets, and I went with my friend Albert, and we had no idea where we were going, and we were drunk out of our mind before we even started, and we ended up getting lost. And back then, you had no GPS, right?
Right.
So
no cell phones.
nothing.
Yeah.
But miraculously, we ended up finding it and getting there in time for the concert, and it was an awesome show. Remember it well.
Good story.
Good stuff, huh?
Yeah.
So, and then we're going to talk about the time we saw him. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember the circumstances surrounding the time we saw him? Can you tell me any details to it?
Just that it was New Year's Eve.
Exactly. It was December 31st, 1992 in New York City. And you know what the name of the theater was?
It was a little place.
It was the Academy Theater.
Okay.
Right. And I had to look all this up because I couldn't remember either. But it was a small place. And they were recording it that night to show on ABC that it was being filmed. And
because Pearl Jam was there.
Right. It was with Pearl Jam. Keith Richards.
Great.
It was Pearl Jam opened up for Keith Richards.
Yes.
How awesome is that?
How did we get those tickets?
I waited online. I heard right
those
before.
were the
And this was the day.
days.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was somehow... This was, what year was this? I said 1992. So
we were just engaged.
I was living in New Jersey at this time, but somehow I was in New York. I was coming to see you or something.
Yep,
and I remember
definitely.
going to a Ticketmaster in Long Island somewhere.
I remember that.
And waiting online.
Yes.
And I got the tickets, and it was like sold out right after me.
I remember. Oh, my God.
Yeah, so it was awesome. Those were the days. Waiting online to buy tickets.
But
Who
you
knew?
got them.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was the thing. If
Yeah,
you
right
were
now.
online,
Right now, all the scalpers would have bought it up and everything. So that was good.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was a great show. That
was a great show.
At midnight, because like we said, Pearl Jam opened up.
Yep.
And Keith came out. He had Sarah Dash singing background. They did Gimme Shelter.
It was fantastic.
And at midnight, they did like a champagne toast and balloons and everything. And they played Time Is On My Side.
Yeah.
What a show that was. Sarah Dash singing and with Keith, and it was just awesome.
And I remember leaving.
Oh, that was awesome, yeah.
Do you remember? It was like the city was...
Exactly. It was New Year's Eve, New York City.
Dead.
10 billion people
Yes.
there. And then this was like 12:30 when we got out or whatever it was. And the streets were
desolate.
empty. And I think they had
Yes.
cleaned up all the paper off the streets too, because we were close to Times Square.
Yes, we were.
That I don't remember how we got in, but
We took the train,
yeah.
definitely.
But I mean, like, I guess through the crowds, but we made it. And that was good
I don't
times.
remember getting there. I remember leaving. Honestly, like I just remember how eerie. I'd never been in the city when it was like quiet. And it was so
on New Year's
quiet.
Eve. Who knew? Because everybody's was there.
They were done.
Everybody's
They'd
there
been
from 8 a.m. peeing on themselves.
You wish.
Yeah.
5 a.m.
Whatever. And they're just sitting in their own urine all day.
I
And
heard
finally,
that they wear diapers.
Exactly. But after 14 hours, that froze up on them. Everyone walking around New York City with frozen diapers. They couldn't wait to get out of there, right?
Or like Frankenstein.
Yeah. So, that was good stuff. And, of course, we're going to see the Rolling Stones again. Coming up
Twice.
this year.
Yeah.
So,
I'm excited.
so let's talk about Keith's life now. Did you know, where's his life?
Like I said, I don't remember that much about his life.
Well, that was basically it. It was drugs, blood transfusion,
like
drugs.
his children.
I'm going to tell you about his children now. Do I have that here? Yes. He was with Anita Pallenberg from 67 to 79. And, she was pretty crazy. They had a wild relationship. And they had 2 kids, Marlon and Angela, a.k.a. Dandelion. She was originally named Dandelion, but I think when she became of age, she said, I'm not going Dandelion. You're a hippie freak, not me. I'm calling myself Angela. No. And then, of course, he married Patty Hansen, supermodel Patty Hansen, and they've been together since 1983.
Right.
Keith is very monogamous.
He is. He
yes.
is.
And did you know he's very well read, too? He's got an extensive library in his house, and he reads all the time.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, see, a lot of things you don't know about him.
He lived in Jamaica.
He's got a few houses, of course, but he has 2 kids with Patty Hansen, Theodora and Alexandra.
Okay,
and
so he has 4 children.
Theodora is actually, she has her own radio show, and I was just listening to the other day. She was interviewing Keith on it. It was very nice. And he has 5 grandkids. And you know where his main residence is? You're never going to know. It's in Connecticut.
Huh.
Exactly. How do you pick Connecticut?
I don't know. A lot of very, very
a lot of
wealthy
rich people live there,
yeah,
but still.
Yeah. Was it Greenwich?
No, it wasn't Greenwich. It was some Connecticut. I don't even know. But he has that house that he was arrested in 1967, Redwoods.
So he's good to go home again.
He bought that, it was like some castle, and it's called Redwoods. And they raided the house, and the girl was in a naked. Marianne Faithfull was naked, and all
everybody
this scandal,
was naked then.
And there was drugs and all this stuff around here. So he keeps that just for the memories.
Wouldn't you?
But then you're right. He does have a house in Jamaica because he loves Jamaica, and the dummy fell out of a tree a few years back, and I thought that was going to be the end. That he had brain surgery, and he's fine though. So did they remove the pressure or the brain, as Norton would say? And he had a very nice, relaxing life now, it seems.
Sounds like it.
Yes,
yeah,
he's surrounded by his children and grandchildren. He was just in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Yep. Johnny Depp modeled that after him. Yeah. And, that's it. That's everything is good in the world of Keith Richards, and he just made the announcement that he's cutting down. He didn't at first. It was stopping, but he scaled back on that. That he's cutting down on hard drinking. He'll just have a little bit here and there and stuff.
It's probably for the best.
He's come full circle now. Yeah. Yes, Keith Richards.
He probably wants to be around for a long time.
So that's it. The amazing life, amazing rock star.
He truly
was, rock star.
Yes, the quintessential rock star.
That's it. You can't say nothing more about him. He's the coolest man in the world. He's the rock star.
Wait,
he's better than your band. No, he's better than your band. He's better than your band, and he's better than your band.
Yes, he is.
So anyone makes fun of Keith Richards, oh, he's old. Look, he looks like this. You're a dummy. Everyone gets old. Right. That's how life works. I don't understand people talking about getting old, making fun of people for they're old. That's how life works.
Right.
You're born. Every day you get a little older, and then you die, and that's it.
Right.
So everybody has X amount on Earth. If you're going to make fun of someone for being old, someone's younger than you. You're going to be older tomorrow.
With the hope of God,
exactly.
You are. That's the thing.
The alternative is much worse, I got to say.
Right.
So.
And I always say that about wrinkles, too. I earned every one of these laugh lines. I really did. It's like, what would I do if I didn't have all these laugh lines? Because I spent my whole life laughing.
There you go. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes. And
So that is it. Of course, the Rolling Stones, the greatest rock and roll band in the world. Keith, the greatest cool guy in the history of the world. So now we're going to read another Rolling Stones Keith story before we go.
Okay.
And it's actually about Mick Taylor, why he left the Rolling Stones. That Madhouse had an exclusive interview with Mick Taylor. So we're going to tell you why he really left the Rolling Stones. So let's hear this now. In an exclusive interview with Madhouse Magazine, Mick Taylor has finally revealed the real reason why he left the Rolling Stones. Mick Taylor was the lead guitarist for the Stones from 1969 to 1974. Taylor played on the Stones' classic albums Let It Bleed, Exile on Main Street, and Sticky Fingers. When I first joined the band, it was all good, said Taylor. Very shortly, though, Keith started pulling pranks on me. Again with the pranks, Keith.
He's a prankster.
Before a particular press conference, Keith told me we were all dressing up like Queen Elizabeth. I get there, and I'm the only one in costume, and they were all laughing at me. I would fall asleep on the plane, and Keith would put my hand in warm water, and I would pee myself. He was constantly sending pizza deliveries to my room. He would put all my guitar picks in Jell-O. Right before every show, he would fart in his hand and rub it on my face.
That's his classic move.
That's his move, obviously. And the final straw came in 1974 during a recording session for It's Only Rock and Roll. Keith did not like what I was playing and kept looking at me disapprovingly. Later that night, at our poker game, Keith came up behind me and gave me an atomic wedgie. The waistband of my underpants went right over my head and almost suffocated me. I went after him with my guitar, but Charlie broke it up. I could not sit down for a week. I had enough. I told Mick I was quitting, and I never looked back. I finally got Keith back, though. at the last reunion in 2013, backstage at Madison Square Garden in New York City, I replaced Keith's denture grip with Ben Gay. There you have it. Madhouse Magazine.
Those guys.
Keith is some prankster, I gotta
Yes.
say. Imagine that Ben Gay and instead of your denture grip. It could be worse, though.
Yeah.
So that's it. All the Keith you ever wanted to know.
Could have bought
And then
hemorrhoid
some.
cream.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, go out and get Talk is Cheap. It's a great album. He
Yeah.
had
Can
another
you smell
solo
it?
after that. Yes, he had another solo album after that called
yeah?
The Main Offender. Ah, that smells good. Let me look at this picture in here.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. Keith looking at you.
Yeah.
Look at his fingers and his
Yeah.
ring. I always wanted that ring. It's got the lyrics here and everything you could
Let
ever
me see
want.
that ring.
That ring?
Oh, wow, yeah. Looks like the mask from Twilight Zone.
Yep. All right, so now we're going to play some more music, wrap this show up here. What do we got to play here, Cha-Cha? Why am I losing all my notes all the time?
You keep,
So it's a very subtle show today, very relaxed, a very tired show. So we're going to play now. Some of these,
the sweater.
these are my favorite, Keith songs. Nice, beautiful ballads that we're going to play. Almost Hear You Sigh from Steel Wheels. And then we're going to play The Worst off of Voodoo Lounge. And then we're going to play Eileen off of Main Offender. 3 songs, Cha-Cha.
Wow.
It's outrageous. And then we're going to play the Artist of the
Live it
Month.
up.
There you have it. All the news, all the radio, all the Keith you ever wanted here on Keith Week 2018. So we'll see you back here for Keith Week 2019.
I could do Keith Week every week.
Yes, that would be a nice time. All right, so let's hear it for us and Keith. MadhouseMagazine.com, 474 The Mix. Let's hear it for us.